and welcome to this week's episode of Cowboys Takeover. I'm your host, Mr. Jason Kent. With me, as always, Mr. Aaron James, over in, I'm assuming sunny California. It's really cold here. Like, it's cold and no snow, which is the worst. It's just like 25 degrees and just windy, so it's terrible. It's not fun. Not fun. Not fun. But let's not worry about the weather. Let's talk about the lost, the terrible after what was last year, after last season, Aaron. If I'd have told you, so I think it was what 2-7, 1-7 this year at home. Well, we 8-0 last year in the regular season. If I'd have told you we weren't even going to get 3 wins at home, would you have believed that? How would you do? You thought I was lying, even without Dak. I'm like, we could pull 3 out at home.
Yeah,
like, come on. This team is This is a team that was a 12-win team the last 3 years. Like, come on,
dude. Yeah, with that, you would have just come to the conclusion that the injuries played a role. When you hear something like that, but yeah, we've lost that home field advantage, and I don't know, it's been tough to get back. It's like very, I don't know, like a psychological thing.
Yeah, and that's tough because last year I felt like you were putting up 30 every week at home. But just diving right in, this loss to the Commanders, one of those, hey, another big fourth quarter for these guys. I think the 2 games combined, it's a ridiculous amount of fourth quarter points. It was a game you figured the Cowboys, once they announced they were starting Trey Lance, which I was kind of excited about it. But then when you kind of dig into the reasons why, Cooper Rush, I think if he just played, I don't know how many snaps he was away. I don't know if they'd have got to it, but if he'd have hit so many snaps, he would have got a bonus. After all season saying they don't want Trey Lance to play, Cooper Rush is our guy. They bring in Trey Lance, who I thought McCarthy called a different game for him than what we've really seen for Rush. Did you feel that way at all in that game? Just I know the Commanders won. They drove down late. They kind of were conceding that game, it felt like, once they took Daniels out of the game and put Mariota in. They come back and get the victory, but I felt like McCarthy just had a different game. It felt like he was a little bit more on the move, a little bit more quick passes as well. I felt like this week than we have seen a lot more than in the past with McCarthy. Or is that just me?
I'm
just excited to see Trey Lance.
My interpretation of what I saw was really just a playbook opening up. Like, hey, we want to see what we got and fire, all the dry powder we have left, we're going to empty the barrel in this game. And when you see the big plays take place, a lot of them were extended plays, out of the pocket plays. And when you look at the teams going into the playoffs that are the top performing offensive teams, in a lot of ways, you got to be able to have that quarterback that can extend the plays. And I feel like in the McCarthy system, Dak, in addition to age, has kind of been reduced to a pocket passer in a lot of ways.
He's going to. I think that's, you saw it this year. When you noticed he wasn't running, the one big run he had, he blew out his leg.
Yeah.
So I guess, you're pretty much, that's what you're going to get going forward. Which is tough. You are right. It does seem like a lot of these quarterbacks are very mobile. The 2 big ones, Lamar and Allen from Buffalo. Hurts is still mobile, got the tush push, but all the other guys can move. And Dak's just not that guy. He's not the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's. He's not in the upper echelon. He's a guy that can feast on the bad teams. When he's had, I think he's had a very easy transition coming in to the game. He had Zeke early, that big run game. He had enough guys. I believe he still had some of the receivers and tight ends there transitioning and get some Amari Cooper. Now you have that, or he has CD. So he's always had that big weapon, but he's just not a guy that I can count on at the end of the game. And it was, I would have liked to have seen the victory. It really felt like they had the opportunity. That play, Mariota, that run at the end was tough.
Yeah.
he went right for the mesh point. Mario just pulls it and goes. But they played very well. I thought the defense, they were there to win. It's tough, man. It's tough. It's a tough way to lose the season. You're not excited. You go out, you just it would have been nice to beat them at the end, but to give it up at the end, the defense played everything. I felt like there was opportunities that they did miss. The punt in the first half to give, in the end zone or the red zone turnover that he didn't turn into a touchdown, his field goals. So I was disappointed. I would have liked to have pulled out a victory in that last game, but like most rest of the season, they just, they blunder it away. It's. I feel like that last game was, basically what our season was wrapped up into a game. It's basically how I felt watching it.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that was the case. Terry McLaurin against Bland, I felt like he could do whatever he wanted. Statistically, he didn't have a crazy game. 62 yards, 8 receptions, and a touchdown.
Well, I felt like they really shut him down the first game. Like outside of that touchdown, it was just he was really shut down the first game. It wasn't he didn't have that big play ability that we've seen in the past from him.
Yeah, and Trey Lance, I give him a C+ grade for this game. And I think what hurts his game the most is his accuracy. It reminds me like a lot of kind of a Lamar Jackson, his first year or two in the league, and then maybe even Josh Allen, his first year in the league, where these guys just really count on their legs more than anything, and you have to think about that trade-off. Like
he hasn't had real reps. Like I give it to him. Like the kid hasn't had game reps since early San Fran time. And then really before that, it was before COVID. So like the last 5 years, it's like I was impressed. I want to give him, I would give him in the B range, low B. I'd probably give him a B- because I just think what I saw with he hasn't really played. So that's why to me, exactly kind of what your thought was. If we could have just gotten him in here and saw, because Cooper Rush is a free agent. So I don't understand the point unless you're really deciding you want to bring Rush back. I don't understand why you don't at least see what Trey Lance is. He's only 24 years old. So you give him 5 games. If you can bring him back, something happens to Dak. He's only 24 years old. He was a first-round pick for a reason. He was projected even without going to San Fran. I know Shanahan believed in him and all that, but I still felt he was going in the first round. So he did have the talent. You see what Sam Darnold's now doing in Minnesota when you put the talent around him. So I think in this, that's why to me I wanted to see him play, because I was a little impressed. I did like what I see with the legs. If you give him guys, you give him CeeDee Lamb, you give him Cooks as your 2, you give him Ferg. I would have liked to have seen what he could have done with a full roster of that offense to see that opportunity. Because I did like what I saw against the Commanders. I mean, a loss, but I was impressed with it, not really seeing him, not getting much playing time in the last 5 years. I was happy. I would have liked to have seen more. Is what I'm saying. That's what I wanted to see 5 weeks ago and build on.
Yeah, he had 6 carries, 26 yards. He's definitely fresh in many ways, being with his age. If he and Cooper Rush cost the same going into next year, the Cowboys already signed Will Grier to their practice squad. But if they cost the same, but you could only bring back one, who are they going to bring back? Who would you want them to bring back?
Well, I would want them to me, that's why I wanted to go Trey. I want to see Trey Lance. I don't know. I just think their thought process, I think they're going to be more inclined to bring back Rush because he knows the sit. Like, I think if McCarthy comes back, you're probably going to see Rush just because. We'll get into McCarthy talk a little bit, but yeah, I think you'll see Rush because he knows the system. So why not have a dude that's very familiar with everything, been here for, been the backup here for years. He knows the system. Why go somewhere else at that point?
And then talking about kind of capping off this game, the season, are you prepared to give a grade to Mike Zimmer yet?
It's tough to grade him because I did think there were parts of the season, especially when they started winning, where they played well. But there were parts where they played very bad. I don't think he had his full complement of players. I think if you had Zimmer last year, or 2 years ago, during one of those runs, I think he would have gotten a better assessment. I think with all of the big injuries they had, you lost Tank, Micah missed some time, Bland missed all the way down the line. Diggs, you lost them all. So
yeah,
it's tough to really give him a grade. And I think losing Dak hurt big time as well because if you lose your quarterback, I get what everyone says, you defense, but if you don't have the drives, you're not putting points on the board. It's easier to have a good offense or a good defense when your offense is better. They're playing better. They're getting they're more rested. So I think all of that takes into factor. So if I were going to grade him, it'd probably be in a C minus. I don't want to go much lower than that because I don't think he had the full complement. He didn't come here. He didn't finish with what he thought he was going to have. So it's really tough to give him based off of that year because you did see flashes.
I have a C plus, and if I really took into account what he did with the depth going into the DBs issue, and really just kind of going into the locker room and taking what was already there, I could probably get to a B minus, but
That's high.
He was really trying to. He had to overcome so much and come up with different, blitzing schemes and ideas to put makeup on the defense. Because we weren't looking pretty.
You're still bottom 5. It's tough to go that high, and I get, trust me, I get it. If it was regular, I'm going F. Without all the injuries, I'm going F. With to me, that's why I can only go C minus. That's why that's the lowest. Just because they're to me, even go C plus. Man, you're bottom 5. You're terrible points. I guess maybe they were top 4. I think they finished 3rd in sacks. They did finish in the upper echelon of sacks. So, they were 3rd in sacks in the season with 52, which actually shocks me looking at it when you go at it that way. Because I felt like early in the season, so that they really that's where I am giving some of it because they did really come through at the end. They did turn it up, but they were still lower tier. It's tough.
Yeah, and our staple for our defense, maybe even more so a couple of years back, was our turnovers. And without the turnovers, without a producing efficient offense, it's tough. And I'm really on the fence still. We'll see as we get closer to the draft. I feel like we're probably 2 players away on offense from being more productive, and then probably another 2 to 3 players away on defense from
I'll agree with you
being more productive. And that's not a good place to be.
So, the last mock I saw based off of the projected rankings, I think Dallas is still 12th. I think that's the last one I saw. And they still haven't taken Genty. Before we go, next topic, is that a dude? Would you take him, or would you go either best available offensive lineman or best available defensive player, or would you take Genty?
I don't have my mind made up on Genty yet. I haven't watched enough film, but he looks like a thumper from what I've seen. I don't know. Who does he remind you of, if anybody?
I haven't watched enough of him. He does look like a guy that takes on contact, but he does have some speed too. So he is gets a little bit of everything.
He looks like a Zeke, but with less agility.
He doesn't look as powerful. He doesn't not coming out of Zeke coming out of Ohio State was next level. Listen, I want the kid. If we're going running backs, I want Cam Scattaboo or whatever. I want the kid from Arizona State. That's the kid I want because that's a kid that's going to give you a little bit of everything. But we'll get more into that once it comes. I would much rather not go. I think a running back is more of a luxury pick at this point, especially with the way the running backs are today. If you look at Detroit, I remember how when I look at Detroit now, their best player, is their right tackle, Penny, and he's the first player. I think he's only the second ever. They said I saw was All Pro twice before age 25 with Anthony Munoz. That's the level of So to me, I know he might have been a little bit higher. I think if you have a stud lineman, or you go best defensive player available, I think you have to. Dallas, you can't go a weapon. But I know there has been no decision made, jumping in our next topic on McCarthy yet. They haven't brought, there's been no yes or no, but I kind of feel like you are leaning one way. The Bears did request to speak to McCarthy, and they were declined. What were your thoughts on that? And, were you shocked that they did decline? I felt like if you're going to get rid of McCarthy, that's an easy out. Let him go interview. So were you shocked at them declining the Bears to talk to McCarthy?
I'm not really shocked because I figured if they're going to let him go interview, they're just going to cut him and just kind of let him spread his wings out in the market. I think it took him like a full day to fully announce that, we decided not to let him talk. So that was a little bit interesting. I think I have to imagine that the conversation's going on this week, and since the season ended, McCarthy has to present, here's what went wrong, here's what I feel we could have done better, and here's my plan, right, for next season, if I'm still around, and here's how I plan to turn things around. And then Jones, I think what I've heard is that Jerry Jones is kind of more inclined to keeping him, while the others around Jones are kind of ready to move on.
Man, that's shocking. I just can't believe Jerry doesn't want to cut. Like, knowing Jerry throughout his career, him not wanting to cut bait at this point with McCarthy. I don't know what rationale. I'm sure we'll hear it because I'm inclined to agree with you. I really thought he was gone. I thought there was, I'd say maybe a 15 to 20% chance he was back. But now that he declined the Bears, like, to me, I thought that was the easy out. You don't have to say, it could just be like, yo, yeah, go ahead. Who wants to take the job? Yeah, easy. Go ahead, go spread your wings. But now that they really said no to the Bears, it kind of gives you that inkling that they're going to bring him back, which I'm not a fan of. If you've been a fan of our show of any length of time, I don't like McCarthy. I didn't like the hiring. I think there's so many other guys out there, young coaches. I think you're giving up the opportunity to talk to, Detroit's offensive and defensive coordinator. I think you got a guy like Vrabel out there, a guy like Saleh. There's a lot of dudes. Minnesota's got some guys. There's a lot of young coordinators out there, I think, that could better suit this Dallas team. But I do think the problem is you kind of have. I think he really has Dak and McCarthy married at this point. I think that's what it is. You can't really get rid of Dak. You don't want to bring in a new offensive dude for Dak. I think that's the reason. Coming off an injury, they want to give it another year, which I hate that excuse because we saw what he was for 3 years before that. But I'm inclined to agree with you, and it's tough. The guy hasn't won anything. I don't care about division titles. This is a team that should be competing for the Super Bowl, and they haven't even got past the divisional round. So he's shown he can't do the job here in Dallas.
A couple of the highlights are he's had high scoring offenses. He does pretty well in the division. And for a while had a good home record. The downsides, he hasn't won meaningful games, hasn't beat winning teams, and the whole playoff record. He really hasn't, shown any really creativity, I think, in the offense either. I think we're a pretty vanilla offense, easy to plan and prepare for.
Yeah,
in
no,
my opinion.
when you look at it, to me, I get Dak. I do think you got to hold Dak accountable some for the drives at the end of some of those games.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, like not having your quarterback prepared for the 2-minute drive at those games, and you're just fumbling and bumbling at the end of those games, to me is that's a reflection of your head coach. And you're right. Like I felt like his big, the big thing he was doing, they were talented enough, to beat up the bad teams. They're not the San Diego Chargers. Haven't been a team that had a lot of talent but couldn't get wins. They've been a winning team that could beat up some bad teams. But when you start getting to their level, they don't have that dude that can take them over to that next step. They don't have the player, and they don't have the head coach. You need one or the other. You either have to have a Bill Belichick. You got to have Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. You got to have somebody. It's better when you have two. When you get head coach and quarterback combined, but you need to have somebody there, and they don't have either one of them that can get them over that hump. And it's so it's I just don't like it. It really does seem like it's gonna be back, and I'm so disappointed.
I feel like we get sucked in there year over year, more so like in the past 3 years, right? With the 12-win record, where we're like, man, we're just like 5% away from edging this team, edging that team, year over year, 5%. But in the NFL, you can imprison yourself when you go into a season thinking, okay, we were 5% away last year. Now that's the new benchmark. But that's not the case, because other teams shuffle around and get better. And I think that's been a downfall, maybe almost the past decade plus of this team. We hold on to coaches too long, and it keeps you entrapped and married to even these underperforming players, where you don't want to let them go because you're vested emotionally. And I think that's going to be a big deal with McCarthy, where we're going to see a lot of the same roster next season if he comes back, because he's going to say, I believe in this guy, I believe in that guy. They just need to do this, they just need to do that. Whereas if you get a coach coming in, they're going to be be more objective about the process and the players.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm 1,000%. That's why I do think that's why 100% why I think he's back, because I think your big name guys are all locked up. So you don't want to really change the system. You don't want to change the scheme, anything. Dak, you don't want to have to get Dak learning anything new. You don't want to see that, you have it established. You have an established culture. Defense, you don't want to, it's not as big of a deal, but that offense, they kind of know who they are. McCarthy's been there for a while. So I'm in agreement with you. And that's the issue, is you saw, this last year, the Eagles go out and go get Saquon Barkley. You see Baltimore go out and go get Derrick Henry, and they're, both of them, and, Eagles, I think, they're both their top two. I think the number 2 or I think Baltimore maybe number 3 seed, but, and Dallas, we're going to go just pay Dak. I think that having to pay Dak really hamstrung us, because that's when you look at the other teams, they did pay their quarterbacks a little bit earlier than Dallas, decided to wait till last minute, and then had to go exorbitant, and Dak really stuck it to him. So it's the issue. So that's the issue, really.
I think at this point, as a Cowboys fan, you can probably only hope for a new defensive coordinator to come in, just to have some new blood.
Speaking of that, when you're looking at it, see, that's my only issue with that is I did like the Zimmer hiring. If you get a guy out there, I think there are a few names that I would be okay with coming in, replacing him. One to me is Saleh, because I think Saleh could be another head coach. If you're saying you're going to replace him with Robert Saleh and be like, hey, let's get the next guy in the door, I'm okay with that. But because you did bring it up, you gave him C+, B-. I gave him more of a C-. Could have been lower. Who do you think? Do you think they are going to replace him? And if so, who's the top of your bucket list to really try to take over this defense?
Now, I am really 50-50 if they're going to replace him. I would maybe edge towards that they're going to keep him. But if you're going to keep McCarthy, I want some sort of switch, some sort of change. there were still a lot of talks about our defense being soft. But I mean, some credit to him in that fundamentally, I mean, we tackled pretty well, and there were some things that I think in certain cases we exceeded our talent levels in certain situations that kind of give you some glimmer of hope. But let's say McCarthy is able to negotiate, or just for whatever reason say let's bring in someone new. You got Salah, you got Vrabel out there. Those would probably be my top two. I know Rex Ryan was interested in that position before bringing Zimmer in. I think that would be interesting. And it's
would he still be interested though? Like it just went.
And he's pursuing the Jets head coach position right now.
Yeah, but Dallas, I don't think to me it was Dallas's defensive coordinator was a much more attractive position last season than it was going into this season.
Yeah,
just a little bit. I agree with you. I think Vrabel and Saleh would probably be top of my list as well, because those are both guys I think both guys I've definitely mentioned for head coach replacement for McCarthy. So I think if you could get either one of those dudes in the door before being a head coach, so that way they're in there, get in there, kind of learn the room. And they're both. I think all of those dudes, those three guys, are more attack guys as well. They're good defensively. Saleh just has been a great guy everywhere he went. I get it. I know what Rex is. We've seen Rex a long time. Everybody's got the name. We all saw what Vrabel did, but to me, Saleh, he left San Fran where everybody said, he had the defense. They've been running through defensive coordinators because they have a good defense. And he goes to the Jets, who weren't that great of a defense. And he turns them around really quick. So to me, that's why I want a guy like Saleh in here. I think he's better suited. I'd like the way he plays defense. It's a hard-nosed team. To me, that he would be my number one pick if he would take a defensive coordinator position.
And a very disciplined coach. Yes. I would trust Vrabel, a Saleh coming into a playoff game where we have a Shanahan style offense, where we have a mobile quarterback, maybe facing Hurts again, or you have just an explosive offense with a lot of talent like the Detroit Lions. Right. I would trust those guys going into one of those games. Like, okay, we can be able to slow them down at least and not get torched. If you think of what Saleh did, I think his biggest staple was his time with the Niners. And then for Vrabel to get the Titans with a Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback to a championship game, I mean, you can't say enough about that.
Didn't Rex Ryan take Mark Sanchez?
Rex Ryan took Mark Sanchez, dude. That's
an accomplishment.
That's itself, a big accomplishment.
Back to back, back to back.
Butt fumble guy.
Yeah. But you listen, and to me, I want to give Zimmer the benefit of the doubt. When you're going through it, Overshawn, missed 4 games. Kendrick missed 2. Bland, Micah only played 13. Bland only played 7. So when you're looking at a lot of these guys, DeMarcus Lawrence only played 4. So when you're looking at I don't see it right off top right here, but I know Diggs didn't play a lot. So when you're looking at a lot of these dudes, they didn't have the guys. So if you bring in one of those defensive coordinators and you have a full complement of that defense that can go get the quarterback, and if you can get the offense back to where they were, again, it's the problem. I think Mozzie's probably not what they thought he was, so they may have to try to go find another defensive tackle. But if you can get that offense back to a scoring offense, which they should be if Dak's back, I don't think there's going to be an issue with the defense. I think Zimmer's going to be fine. If you have, if you don't have the bad luck that they had this year, I think you'll be fine. But I'd like to see Saleh. That's a guy I'd be okay with bringing in.
Mm-hmm. And who knows?
To keep Zimmer.
Who knows? How do we keep Gilmore around? We could have used him this year.
That's one I would have liked, especially because he didn't sign for a lot going to Minnesota. I would have liked to keep Gilmore. Yeah, it was rough. It was a rough year when you look through it, but the amount of injuries, you don't really expect them to win. It's not like I know when the Eagles won the Super Bowl when they lost their quarterback, but they still had a full complement of all their players. You lost so much on defense. You lost your starting quarterback. It's really tough. It's tough. You lost a lot of your offensive linemen went down. They overcame a lot of injuries. I think you got to be pretty happy. They had an opportunity to really. They could have finished 9-8. They probably they could have still been a 10-win team had a couple of games gone their way. Like again, this one, I think Cincinnati's a game they could have taken. So there's a few games that could have been went one way or the other that didn't go Dallas's way. They could have been possibly a playoff team. And I think to get 7 wins with what happened, you're okay. And listen, they did come out, except for the last game. They really said they wanted to play rush to win. I'm okay going for the win. You got the 12th overall pick. It was a rough season. Aaron and I are still going to go through it, kind of break it down a little bit more. We didn't want to, bring in a full season recap. We wanted to wait till the McCarthy news, which I thought by now we would have, honestly, especially with the Bears offer. But so we'll be back next. We don't know when. Once we get that McCarthy news, we'll probably be better. We'll probably get Zimmer news right after with who's coming back and who's going. So we'll have our season breakdown and kind of preview, kind of be able to build up and see what's going forward with what happens next. But we won't know hopefully soon with the divisional round wrapping up. I know the head coaches can interview, so coming up soon. So hopefully Jerry Jones makes a decision rather quickly with the first game slated to start in about a half an hour now. Aaron, before we go, what final thoughts do you have? I know we still going to have our end of season recap, but kind of final thoughts do you have for the year? What are your how are you feeling?
Yeah, a disappointing season, but even as disappointed as I am, it's like not really surprised on how things shook out, right? We weren't surprised that coming into the season, we had the lowest rated RB room in the league. And it was really just Dak and CD. That was our offense. So
he still got 1,000 yards though, too.
He did. So I mean, a heartbreaking season, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to turn this type of losing season into what we did when we had Zeke, when we picked up Zeke in the first round, or even Parsons in the first round.
Parsons was 11 though.
That's true.
I don't see anybody dropping. I think CD dropped later. I haven't really looked at the draft much.
Well, the problem is I don't think the draft is as QB deep as in prior years, and I
don't think that's
going to
either.
Well, no,
I think it is actually. There's a lot of QBs this year.
When it's a deep QB class, then you have like your first maybe you have to get 3 or 4 QBs in the first 10 picks.
I think that's going to happen, honestly, this year.
If that does happen, that helps guys like us.
I think that really well. I think that's going to, because you have, I think Shador, they already said, Cam Ward, I think Ewers from Texas is coming out, and there's got to be another couple other names that I know I'm missing, but I do think that happens. But you're right. There's nobody. You're not top of the draft. I'm still mad they didn't draft Jalen Ramsey a few years ago instead of Zeke. But you're right. A few more losses would have been nice. Could have positioned you better. But I'm happy over Sean. I'm really excited. Gosh, I hope this kid can stay healthy next year, because I'm so impressed with what he did. That's, to me, being out of it, knowing I was able to watch him made games a little bit easier, because I could watch this kid just play. And I was excited to see the growth and to see him go down, man. Because the kid had 90 tackles. He was definitely on pace to finish with over 100. Possibly could have led the team had he finished out the season. So I think that's what you're looking forward to. See how some of these next guys grows. I think that you, at this point, you're really just excited for the draft. And it's going to be early. At least this year you're going to get an early pick. So, 12th, you're thinking probably about 2 hours into the draft, at 12. So, you're not waiting until midnight now. So it's a positive there.
Yeah, and McCarthy's contract ends, I think, on the 14th. So a decision does have to be made.
Okay.
Yeah, whether we're gonna, extend or what have you. And Unfortunately, also what's also painful about this is that if we do extend, it's likely not going to be a 1-year extension.
Yeah, no, not after doing 1 year. I don't think come back on another one. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's tough, but hopefully by the 14th, we'll let everyone know when the next show's coming. Just be prepared. It'll probably be sometime shortly after that, probably that week, next week or two. Won't wait too long because that way we'll be able to break it down and kind of go over our thoughts and feelings. But we want to thank everyone for watching this season. Not what you expected, not what we expected. We kind of expect to be playing this weekend or have a bye week, but we're not. So everyone, go out, enjoy the rest of today, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the playoff football. There's a ton of good games on. We've done enough mourning of this season. We kind of knew it was over when Dak went out, so we've mourned enough. We don't need to mourn the season. It is what you expected. No, it's not. I'm sure you did not expect it. You predicted us the Super Bowl, buddy. I think that's what I'd heard. But thank you. If you're watching this on the Cowboys Takeover podcast on YouTube or the Ring the Bell Network, thank you. Push like, subscribe. If you're on the Facebook page, wherever you guys are giving us a watch or a follow, please give us a like and subscribe. I'll put that up there for you. Hopefully, if it's not the Cowboys, maybe, I don't know, probably not. They're not good enough. Jalen Hurts isn't good enough. He's if they had a better quarterback, they'd win. They don't, so they're not winning. And I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. Just can't do it. He's the guy. But thank you. Give us a like, subscribe. We'll be back with our end of year thoughts, kind of break down the season. After the McCarthy news, we'll be able to break down a little bit better. So appreciate you all. Love you all. This is it till we get that news. But thank you. Again, if you like, subscribe, you'll know when we're coming up with that next episode. Appreciate you all. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and try to stay warm if you're on the East Coast.